Ciaccona will blow the enemy away with her music, and in this video I'm going to tell you how to build her best and in what team she works. Starting with how she works. First of all, her basic attacks. They are pretty complicated if you try to read them, but don't worry, I'll simplify it for you. It's an attack string of 4 hits, with the 4th hit applying arrow erosion. If you dash cancel the 4th basic attack, she'll spawn an ensemble sylph, which is essentially like a clone that will continue doing the animation. That way you're able to dash cancel your 4th basic, allowing you to do your rotation faster, considering the fact that you're going to be able to do a different attack faster. After finishing the 4th basic attack, either Ciaccona or the clones are going to enter solo concert, and while anyone is in solo concert, the team's arrow damage bonus will be increased by 24%. Her heavy and her aerial attack are not essential, you don't need to know what they do, you're never going to use them. Her skill is simply a dash forward. It applies a stack of area erosion and allows you to start on your 2nd basic after using it, meaning that after your 4th basic, you're able to do your skill and then immediately start on your 2nd basic rather than the 1st. Her liberation is very interesting. Ciaccona will enter the recital state, and while in recital, Ciaccona will be able to release waves of arrow damage at a specific interval. If you are still on field on Ciaccona, you have to press the button yourself for this hit of arrow damage to do its thing. However, if you swap off, she will do it automatically. These waves will apply either arrow erosion or spectrofrazzle. You can choose which one it will apply. And when you swap off, the effect it applies will be the one that you last used. So if you did spectrofrazzle first and then swapped off, she will continue to apply spectrofrazzle. But if you do frazzle and then arrow erosion, she will apply arrow erosion off-field. If you decide to do neither of the inputs, the standard will be arrow erosion. So this is going to be the majority of Ciaccona's arrow erosion application. And unlike most other DOT applicators, she's capable of applying DOT from fully off-field, which is incredibly convenient. Moving on to her Forte circuit, Ciaccona has 3 Forte bars, which you're able to generate either with your intro skill or with your 4th basic attack. And when you have 3 Forte bars, your heavy attack will be replaced with a special heavy attack quadruple downbeat. This will group enemies and deal arrow damage. Ciaccona's intro skill will regenerate 1 bar of Forte and immediately allow her to start on her 3rd basic attack, meaning that you don't have to do your 1st and 2nd after using your intro skill. And then for the outro skill, Ciaccona will amplify the arrow erosion dealt to targets nearby your current resonator by 100%, essentially doubling the damage of arrow erosion. Then for her inherent skills, the first one will give Ciaccona a shield equal to 100% of her max HP when she uses her liberation, which lasts for 4 seconds and cannot transfer to the next character. This essentially makes it so Ciaccona isn't completely punished for standing still after using her liberation. And then we have her 2nd inherent skill, which will increase the damage of her Forte heavy attack by 30%. Not that impressive. For her level up priority, level up her liberation first, as it is most of her damage output. After that, I would level up her basic attacks. You're using enough basics to where it does more damage than your Forte or your skill. After that, level up your Forte. I would honestly not put too many resources into the skill or the intro, because their damage is incredibly negligible. So now that you know how Ciaccona works, it's time to start getting into her weapon options. Her best in slot, even in teams where you are not using arrow erosion, is going to be the Woodland Aria, having a base attack of 500, 36% crit rate, as well as giving 24% damage bonus to Ciaccona after applying arrow erosion. It also has a permanent 12% attack, and will also decrease the arrow resistance of opponents when they are hit with arrow erosion. This is going to be good for all future arrow erosion comps, but it's Ciaccona's best in slot even when it's not an arrow erosion comp, because of the sheer amount of damage it gives to Ciaccona herself. If you don't have the Woodland Aria, you can still get by completely fine with Static Mist. It's going to increase the attack of the next resonator by 10%, as well as having a high base attack and crit rate. This weapon is going to be very strong when using Ciaccona with any attack scaling DPS, which currently is every DPS in the game, so Static Mist is going to serve you completely fine. The second best in slot for Ciaccona when we're looking at pure damage, however, is going to be Carlotta's signature, The Last Dance. It doesn't really have that much synergy with Ciaccona, it just has a high amount of crit with a good base attack. The skill damage doesn't really matter that much for Ciaccona, she's completely fine without it. If you're looking for a 4-star option, you either want to go for Romance and Farewell, or Cadenza. Cadenza will make her rotations faster, giving you concerto energy after using your skill, and Romance in Farewell is more of a damage-focused option. It gives attacks when you hit enemies that have a negative status onto them, and because Ciaccona applies Air Erosion herself, she's able to stack this up on her own. There are other options, but Romance in Farewell is craftable, so there's no need to go for anything that's worse than it. Next up, it's time to look at her echoes. This is going to be interesting because her best in slot is technically a set that isn't really usable for anyone yet, but you'll understand when we get there, because the set I'm talking about is Gusts of Welkin. The two-piece will give an unconditional 10% arrow damage bonus, and when you apply Air Erosion, you will give yourself 15% arrow damage bonus, as well as an additional 30% arrow damage bonus to the entire team, stacking up to a total of 40% on Ciaccona herself, which is the same as 5-piece Sierra Gale, which is meant for arrow DPS characters. The primary echo you're going to be using on this set is going to be Reminiscence Fleur-de-Lis for its unconditional 10% arrow damage bonus. While it isn't able to trigger the extra amount of arrow damage bonus that Arrow Rover or this mystery character would get, it's still more of a bonus than any other echo on Gusts of Welkin would give you. Unless you want to get the 12% heavy attack damage for Capitaneas, but that just does less damage than Fleur-de-Lis. This set is going to be good when using Ciaccona with someone like GN for example, but it's not going to be useful for any non-arrow DPS character. If you're trying to use Ciaccona in those kinds of scenarios, your best bet is going to be Moonlit Clouds. I doubt I have to explain what it does, but I will anyway. It gives energy regen on the 2-piece, and on the 5-piece it will give 22.5% attack to the next Resonator that swaps in after Ciaccona uses her outro skill. So basically, the character you intro into from Ciaccona. The best echo to run with this set would obviously be the Impermanence Heron for the 12% damage bonus it gives to the next character. This set is primarily going to be good with Phoebe or Zani teams, where you're not capable of benefiting from the extra arrow damage that you get from Gusts of Welkin. For her stats, you want to go crit on your 4 cost, arrow damage on your 3 cost, and attack on your 1 cost. You want approximately 120% energy regen for Ciaccona to be able to use her Liberation every single rotation. While you are capable of swapping your damage percent free cost to an attack free cost, I personally would try to stick to arrow damage unless your attack one has better substats. Remember, if a piece has a slightly worse main stat but better substats, it's usually worth it to just go for the one that has better substats. It's time to get into Ciaccona's teams. The best team for Ciaccona on release is going to be with Phoebe. Ciaccona is capable of applying Spectrofrazzle from off-field, something that Phoebe has been sorely lacking. This combined with Ciaccona's personal damage and her grouping makes her an excellent teammate for Phoebe. The third slot is incredibly flexible. You're able to use Spectra Rover, Shorekeeper, Verena, or even Mortefi. This makes Phoebe an incredibly versatile DPS now when it comes to teammates, because not only do you have the classic Spectra Rover teams, you now additionally have Ciaccona as another character that you're able to run for Spectrofrazzle on your Phoebe. Thanks to Ciaccona, Phoebe is now going to be incredible even for multi-wave content, and her DPS gets raised high enough to where she can now compete with DPS Zani more effectively, with the best Phoebe variation being Phoebe with Ciaccona and Verena. Another team you're able to use Ciaccona with is with any arrow DPS, primarily GN. This is because Ciaccona is capable of buffing arrow damage bonus by 24% in her basic attack, as well as being able to use 5-piece Gusts of Welkin to buff arrow damage even further, meaning that Ciaccona is going to be a good support for any arrow DPS. In these kinds of teams, it's actually better to run Arrow Rover instead of Shorekeeper, because while Arrow Rover does buff your characters less, increasing the cap on Arrow Erosion stacks is enough of a damage gain to make Arrow Rover worth it over Shorekeeper in these teams. Ciaccona doesn't really have anything else to work with currently, because Arrow Erosion isn't really that well fleshed out yet, but I'm assuming this is going to be changing with Cardathea. If I had to guess, the best Cardathea team will likely be using Ciaccona and Arrow Rover. And now finally, it's time to get into Ciaccona's sequences. Her first sequence will make it so whenever you cast your Resonant skill, Ciaccona will be immune to interruption for 3 seconds. And additionally, after using a basic attack, Ciaccona will gain 35% attack. This is a pretty decent sequence, not really that insane or anything, but it is pretty okay. The second sequence is the real meat and potatoes, giving 40% arrow damage bonus to the team when Ciaccona is in her Resonance Liberation. While this isn't really used that much currently, I can see this definitely being exploited very well by the future Error Erosion team. The third sequence allows Ciaccona to get an additional Forte bar after your 4th basic, meaning you only have to use your intro and then a 4th basic attack in order to get full Forte on Ciaccona. Additionally, she gets an additional charge of her skill. What it comes down to is this allows Ciaccona to speed up her rotation by a bit. The 4th sequence will allow Ciaccona to ignore 45% of enemy defense with her heavy attack quadruple downbeat or with her Resonance Liberation. This is actually pretty good for a sequence 4. Good job, we finally got a sequence 4 that isn't mid. Then for sequence 5, Ciaccona gains 40% liberation damage, and when you are within the range of Ciaccona's liberation, your characters take 30% less damage. This is an okay sequence. I don't really understand why we're getting survivability this late on, but it is what it is. I wouldn't get this personally. And then for S6, whenever Ciaccona or one of her ensemble sylphs enter the solo concert mode, there will be a tick of 220% of arrow damage, which counts as resonance liberation damage. This allows you to run some pretty wacky DPS Ciaccona stuff. It's obviously not going to be on the level of an S6 DPS, but it is pretty nice. Basically, you just want to spam your basic 4 for this playstyle. I'd say it's an okay sequence. If you're only using Ciaccona for a sub-DPS playstyle, I would not go for this, but if you want to run DPS Ciaccona, I'd say try and go for it. So, did you learn anything new about Ciaccona? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. I'm pretty active in there, so if you ask your question there, there's a pretty good chance I'll respond. But that'll be it from me. Peace.